Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Ira Angrisani, and I am the Investor Relations Manager of Acea. Thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure for me to welcome you to the presentation of the business plan of Acea spanning the period 2018-2022. The business plan was approved a few minutes ago by the Board of Directors appointed last April that met for this occasion here in Milan. The business plan 2018-2022, which is going to be presented today, is the first business plan of the new Acea era. It is the first time that Acea organizes an event of this kind, and we would like to thank Borsa Italiana, the Italian Stock Exchange, to host this event. Let me now go through the agenda of today. The President, Avvocato Luca Alfredo Lanzalone, will start the presentation, and then Mr. Donnarumma, the CEO, will present the strategy and the targets of the business plan. Here with us, we have a number of directors, Miss Michela Castelli, Miss Gabriella Chiellino, Miss Liliana Godino, and Mr. Fabrizio Rossignol. We also have here the statutory auditors, Miss Rosina Cicchello and Professor Corrado Gatti. At the end of the presentation, we shall have a Q&A session for the people here in the room and also for those who are connected through conference call. At 1 o'clock, we shall have lunch and a press conference, which will be attended by the top management of the group. I'll hand you over the president of the company. Thank you very much, and good morning to you all. First of all, I would like to tell you what Acea is.
Poi pressione, cos'è Acea?
Well, as you can see, a number of very nice things. As you heard, the Board of Directors of Acea, which I chair, a few minutes ago concluded its meeting, which approved unanimously the business plan of the group spanning the period 2018-2022. It's a very ambitious and very innovative business plan, a clear discontinuity with our past, and we go back to our traditions in order to achieve important entrepreneurial targets. Now, the business plan is the result of a very intense dialogue. We developed the business plan with a bottom-up methodology so as to make sure that we can go back to our sound roots, and which has always leveraged on human capital of the group. Now, as I said, this is a very challenging business plan. We don't have, in this case, top-down targets which have not been shared by the employees of the company. In this business plan, technology innovation is considered to be a driver for a sound growth. I will not get into the details of the business plan because they will be presented by the CEO of Acea, Mr. Donnarumma, who has been the person who has driven the debate and has then made sure that the plan could be presented today. At this point, let me hand you over to Mr. Donnarumma. Good morning to you all. Thank you very much for being here. I will start immediately from page number 3 of the presentation, where you can see the positioning or the footprint of Acea in this market. As you know well, Acea operates in different Italian regions, Umbria, Tuscany, Lazio, Campania, and in a number of Latin American countries as well, where we basically have regulated activities accounting for 80% of our results, and then we operate in the field of electricity distribution, water business or integrated water cycle, trading, public lighting, sales of electricity and gas, and then other business. As far as the water business is concerned, we are leader. We rank first in Italy, 9 million customers, RAB 1.3 billion euros. Electricity distribution, we rank number 2 because of our business, because of the number of customers and the size of grids, 1.6 million of PODs, users all in Rome, RAB 1.9 billion euros, public lighting, number 5, we're ranked 5, 200 lighting points operated, 80% through LED technology. When it comes to sale of electricity and gas, 1.4 million customers, and we sell 7.2 terawatt hours of electricity sold. And environment, we rank 6th, 1 million tons of water treated, 360 gigawatt of electricity produced. You know very well our shareholders, 51% Roma Capitale, 23.3% the Suez, the French group, 5% Caltagirone Group, almost 21% other investors, among which a number of major institutional investors. Let me say something about this. Here on this slide, you see EBITDA 2017. Well, the plan will be illustrated starting as a basis the 2017 guidance. We are at the end of November. We have a good visibility of what is going to happen from here to the end of the year. You know our guidance because it was communicated in previous occasions, and here you will see that we start from our basis for 2017, 832 million euros of EBITDA. Let's move on to page 4, where you can see the main market trends which are expected in the coming years, and which, of course, characterize also Acea when it comes to its strategy. As to the water business, going forward, we expect a major regulatory drive. As you know, we shall shortly have reforms of regulations to introduce or to enhance the technical quality of water, as was the case in the past. This is a very challenging condition for different operators. It was like that during the second and third regulatory cycle for energy, for instance, when and that back then it was very challenging for electricity operators in the past, but it also improved and increased investments and enhanced the service provided, and has not impacted on the capability of the leading operators to provide their service. Now this is going to occur in the water business. And as you will see, we have decided to take upon ourselves all of the related challenges. Investments will grow. In Italy, we still have a number of problems about the cleaning and filtering of water to be in line with EU regulations, and we sometimes have not so much seasonal factors, but draft problems that has had an impact on all of the regions of Italy. In the water business, there is also a drive to consolidation of the market, to consolidate the management of this business, because there are problems in implementing sustainable and reliable plans and to offer services, and we shall also move in this direction. As far as energy is concerned, the main rules are dictated by SEN, and so we may expect rules about decarbonization, which in our case applies to electricity or electrification. There will be a number of important issues related to DSO. We want to be the main player, since we manage one of the most important Italian DSO. And another thing which is important is technology and innovation, and especially if you connected to the second wave of smart meters. And all operators in a couple of years will have to deploy the second generation smart meters, the so-called 2G smart meters, that will open up a different way to involve the customers as well. At the same time, in the energy business, again, another important issue is the deregulation of the market. That is the full deregulation of the market with the end of the enhanced market protection. As far as environment is concerned, we are an operator which is interested in growing in the environment business, but we want to grow especially in the part of the circular economy, which has to do with the reduction of waste at the origin. For instance, reducing sludge. We are the leader in processing sludge, but also reduction of industrial waste and urban waste as well. We're not interested in other businesses within the environmental industry. And what is important also is the treatment of organic waste, where we already are operating there, and we want to grow. Now let me move on to page number 5, and let's see the 4 pillars underlying our business plan. These are the pillars that we also used in the past, and they haven't changed, but their rationale and the figures behind these pillars have improved. These pillars are industrial growth, local focus and sustainability, technology, innovation and quality, and operational efficiency. And we shall see how the figures of the plan fit to the strategy. Now, our growth is characterized by a challenging number of capex. There is 3 billion euros in 5 years. This has never been done by the Acea group, especially in these past years. It's a very challenging plan, because making investments for us means overcoming a number of difficulties and local difficulties as well. But we have to, and it's appropriate to make investments. In this business, we have regulated infrastructures, and therefore investments are the only way to grow the results and to grow the expectations of the quality of the service and at the same time also growing and improving the relations with the areas and with the municipalities with which we work. Then we shall see how these investments are going to be deployed. But here you can see something interesting, that is RAB going up to 4 billion euros. At the moment it is around 2 billion. So investments will aim at least 85% at growing the RAB of the company, the RAB of the company. So a very sound business plan that will help the company become more resilient, not only when it comes to its plans, but also when it comes to its economic and financial results. We should also grow our customers. At the moment, we have 1.4 million customers. As you can see here, we aim at going up to 1.9 million customers, which is quite a sizable growth. We believe that we have to change the way with which we establish relations with our customers, and we want to improve our customer experience. A number of actions have already been implemented. We are also preparing a new campaign, which is not only going to be marketing oriented, but it will show that we are aiming at reorganizing products and services that we provide. As to the waste treatment, we would like to go up by 70% versus what we at the moment treat. This is going to be by building new plants or purchasing new treatment plants.
Local impact is quite intuitive, but there are some major drivers listed here. For instance, we mentioned leakage, water leakage. Last summer we went through one of the biggest crises that the industry have had to try and come to terms with since forever, since as far as we know at least. And we had to try and tackle the water draft problem in the city of Rome. I have experience in other cities, and I have to say that Rome is even more complicated than any other location. Of course, Rome is a very big city to begin with. There are many, many tourists. All the ministries and state institutions are located there, so you can imagine how much pressure we were submitted to last summer. Now, having said that, the proof of its worth that Acea was able to give in the last few months is under everybody's eyes. Today, as you drive into Rome, you realize that the water inflow is at least 2 cubic meters per second more than usual. It's about 17 cubic meters per second, which is the normal water inflow in the city of Rome. So we did manage service. There were some challenges. There were some lacks of services, but very limited, fortunately. And we managed to achieve that result because the company stepped in altogether through our skills, through our experience and expertise. We couldn't rely on anybody else. We should rely on our own expertise and know-how only. And we succeeded in doing that because of our century-old history and track record, and because of the technical competence of our management team, which was very good in reacting to serious challenges. And as far as leakage is concerned, we're going to put in place an important plan based on the experience we gathered last summer. We will actually implement a new system and a new method to try and minimize leakage. Another important sustainability issue is decarbonization. We will contribute to this by improving electrification first and foremost. The electricity network of Rome is the biggest electricity grid in Italy. It's for high voltage and medium voltage, and I did it personally in the past few years because in the past I was the CEO of Acea Distribuzione, the electrical grid of Rome, and I know that hundreds of millions were invested in high voltage and medium voltage networks, but not much was invested in low voltage networks, and this is becoming a very important and urgent thing because enabling consumption and consumers is the most important thing. Users want to be able to consume more electricity. They need to actually continue along the inevitable way ahead, which is that of shifting from gas to electricity more and more, induction plates for cooking, high performance heat pumps for heating and cooling houses, electrical cars that are going to become more and more popular in the near future. As a consequence, the low voltage network has to be improved and enhanced, and we will do so by trying to enable all customers to shift from the 3 kilowatts to the 6 kilowatts provision in the near future. Today, it would be quite challenging to do it overnight. In the near future, it's going to be possible to do it in line with the market's expectations and demands. Anyway, it's not just a question of allowing people to get access to bigger meters, it's a question of network and grid resilience. You'll hear me speak about resilience quite often. Myself, my people, the company management, the board of directors, we decided to design this particular business plan to be as resilient as possible. And by resilient, I mean that since we manage infrastructures for the public good, we need to be able to manage our infrastructure at all times in whatever challenging situation we may happen to be, and guarantee the best possible service level at all times. This is not yet possible because of some infrastructure gaps, and we have to work to correct them. Also, we need to enhance economic and financial resilience, meaning we need to perform investments by guaranteeing economic performance and without making the company too heavily burdened with financial burdens. And so this is what the President was hinting at before. So besides electrification, we are going to recover material. So that's another issue we work on. And the environmental side of our work will see Acea increasingly engaged in developing installations for waste processing. We are using new technologies, we are building very important projects, and we will attack waste ever since the very origin. So sludge first and foremost, but also will be available to design solutions or to identify solutions for the local communities where we are active. So technology, innovation and quality is another pillar. This is characterized by three concepts. First is the technology side. In that 3.1 billion of investment we are going to put in place in the next 5 years, about 400 million will be dedicated to investing in technology applied to infrastructures. I'm not referring to digitalization or IT. I'm talking about applied technology. What does that mean? Well, for us, technology is an accelerator, and at the same time, it serves as a kind of a delaying factor. Let me explain this better. So on one side, technology will accelerate, speed things up, because it should allow us to reach objectives and achieve them in shorter times than we may obtain by massively replacing obsolete infrastructures. Only through technology can we stay on a reasonable curve of technology replacement with a high level of performance. And I'm referring to network automation, for instance, both water networks and electrical grids. I mentioned the water networks before, and if water networks are suitably equipped with the innovative technology, performances that can be obtained will be unobtainable otherwise, unless we totally change infrastructures, and the same is true for electrical networks. So the main purpose of technology for us is obtaining technical and economic performance earlier than we could do by replacing obsolete plants with newer plants. On the other hand, technology may actually delay aging of infrastructures. Infrastructures age like everything else, and they age quicker if they're badly used, if they're overused. For instance, if you have high pressure in water piping or high electrical loads in water wiring, infrastructures become old much more quick than they should. And we will try and use technology to exploit infrastructures as little as possible and extend their useful life. And of course, both things will go together. Now, having said that, we may translate that into the concept of smart grid, applying technology to infrastructures, making sure they are as integrated as possible. And this is a concept which is really, really close to the ideal of a smart grid. Then what's the smart city development for us? Well, what we mean by smart city is that together with our infrastructures, we will use new telecommunication systems that have high bandwidth, high speed, high data transfer capability, and I'm referring to optic fibers and 5G, and we'll use all possible systems to make sure we develop another type of service too. So for companies like us, we will extend new services to our users in the first place, but then from there we'll extend it to all of the citizens. So thanks to the implementation of second generation meters, thanks to more effective communication systems, we will be able to provide services to users that are not necessarily commodity services only. I'm thinking of concepts like demand response management, including the role of the DSO, but I'm also thinking of other services like physical security of buildings and people, or services to enhance the city life, like providing information on traffic, parking lots, street lighting, street safety, people safety, and so on. All of those activities will belong to our future business in a way which I'm going to elaborate on later on in my presentation. Now, having said that, we are certainly going to focus on the commercial side of our offering. We want to be innovative there too. We want to raise the bar and improve what we know as customer journeys or customer experience. Normally, when I talk to my colleagues, and some of them have been working with me for years now, what I tell my people normally is that Acea has never been a very good salesman because it's more of a technology company. Its installations and grids have always been top class. But at the same time, of course, we are engaging in the commercial side too. We've always been the leading player in a specific location. We've always been well known and appreciated by citizens, and it's relatively easy for us to sell. So the effort that the new Acea will have to make will be that of selling by challenging the rest of the market players. We'll try and provide a service which is going to be better than we did so far. And we believe this is not just limited to the pricing of the commodity or to some captivating commercial offer, but we will improve customer service. We want our customers to feel pampered by the company. That's the approach we want to adopt. So that's we call it customer journey, and that's why we expect a reduction of costs to serve, because we'll need to fund these operations, and we'll have to finance them to the best benefit of our investors and shareholders, and that means we need to improve efficiency. So in other words, we'll need to do better and reduce costs at the same time. So operational efficiency is the name of the game here. I certainly appreciate this definition, which is CAPEX and OPEX discipline. This is actually what I insisted on in the company personally. And what I mean by CAPEX and OPEX discipline is the following. So we said we're going to spend 3.1 billion euros in 5 years. Indeed, our purpose is that of physically spending more money than that. So in other words, with that money, we want to build more infrastructures than that money would allow us to buy today. So that's what I mean by CAPEX and OPEX discipline. We will try and make sure we spend the money where it's needed, when it's needed, and to make it yield as much as we can. So that doesn't mean investing only where capital will command higher tariffs. We want capital to pay out also in terms of higher network efficiency, reduction of OPEX, and so on. So this is what I mean by applied technology. But that also extends to investment as usual, the standard characteristic investment in infrastructures. It is certainly not true that investing on a certain pipeline or another would be the same thing. This is only true if you have to fill in forms for the authorities, but this is not true in business terms. I grew up in factories where when you had to spend €1, you had to justify that investment. 1 year was the payout time, the payback time, which was acceptable. And this is what I learned throughout my experience. And this is what I've brought in the infrastructural management position I have been holding for 10 years now. I've been working in 3 different listed groups, and I've learned that normally this CAPEX and OPEX discipline is not in the DNA of utility companies, but it is my personal DNA. I did it in Acea, I did it in Infrastrutture di Roma, I'm doing it again in Acea, and it is something that is actually translated into a limited number of simple concepts. First, you have to prioritize investments, understand exactly what they're necessary for. You have to separate what can be managed to predictive and planned maintenance, and what should be actually replaced and not just maintained in terms of actual installations. So many times when some parts of the network break, engineers normally tend to go out there and change pretty much everything. Well, someone has to pay for that investment, so we'll only replace what needs replacing. In many instances, you only have to replace some components and just prepare good plant maintenance for the rest of the components. So this is a kind of decision that's got to be made at all times. And without wasting too much of your time, I would simply like to communicate to you that behind every plan we have a very careful investigation and kind of a line-by-line review of every single thing we do. Having said that, the latest concept here is generational turnover. You may think this is high or low, but I have to tell you it's a very high turnover rate if you think of the classic typical turnover in this kind of companies. We have about 5,000 employees in the central part of the company, plus another 3,000 that serve the company in a way, so 8,000 altogether. So 300 plus people means it's a quite high turnover. So if we turn around 50 to 60 people every year, considering the seniority is not particularly high, we actually replace some people who reach retirement age or leave the company by their own will, and replace them with younger people. And this is really important for us because we want to engage in our projects in a way which is very different from the past. So you may wonder, well, what did we do in the past? Well, what we did in the past is as soon as people retired, they were replaced by a new hire. What we want to do is something totally different. We already started working on this project with our Human Resources Department, and this project is going to be enhanced in the next few months. So we need to plan our human resources turnover so that gradually we will hire younger people who are more keen on new businesses. We want to insource some of the skills that are outsourced today that are core competencies for us. And I'm referring to high technology, for instance. It doesn't make sense for us to think of implementing advanced grid automation or remote control if we only have like 3 engineers who are experienced in this. You can't count on a limited number of people in a company as big as ours. So we need to work to have the right people with the right set of skills. They need to have the right motivation. They must be familiar with digital technologies. They shouldn't be scared by controlling equipment in a digital electronic way and not an electromechanical way anymore, which means, in other words, we need a whole set of new skills. And we won't just hire new talent from the outside. We'll work in the company so that our people will actually gear up to speed and convert to this type of work. So we are in the process of creating an in-house management academy. We are in the process of launching technical training courses for our people in the company, and turnover will be done especially on the more technical engineering jobs, because our company tends to have maybe too many resources in staff functions, and we want to increase our engineering skills and competencies more. Hence, we are engaged in these last few weeks in a rebalancing exercise. We want to rebalance the weight of staff people as against operating people. In other words, I could tell you that during the plan period, from 600 people who are now in the holding staff positions, we'll end up having 100 or 150 people less in staff positions, and more people will be in business areas. Some people will actually do the same things they do today, but they won't do it at the headquarters. They'll do it at the individual business organizations, so they will relate to the actual business much more than they do today. Other people will be retrained, and their professional skills will be improved and increased by doing so. So I spent some time on this because I think it's absolutely fundamental. I'm going back to something that our president said. This is not a plan that consultants designed. Consultants will certainly support us, but they cannot design our plans from scratch. This plan was actually constructed by our management, by our middle management. This plan is based on the needs of our installations, on the local communities we serve, the service we want to provide our customers with. And we took office at the beginning of May, and we're presenting this plan at the end of November because we didn't want to rush through it. We didn't want to do just some superficial makeup. We wanted a very, very practical, in-depth plan. The plan is up and running already. We're presenting it today, but it's started already, and we'll see it in perspective for the future years.
Let me now move on to the next page of the presentation, page number 6, and here you have the main figures and the targets of the business plan. Now, the 2017 guidance is the basis for this business plan. Acea aims at going above 1 billion euros of EBITDA in 2020 with net profit at 282 million euros, and in 2022, 1.1 billion EBITDA, 332 million net profit. So, as you can see, this is a major challenge, and that has been based on fundamentals. We have some challenges here based on a number of actions that we can put in place. Our commercial work is going to grow considerably, but it is not going to affect the EBITDA strongly. And then the environment business there, the challenge will be receive the authorization to build plans. It's not a matter of understanding how to build a plan or how to manage a plan, because we believe that we are very good at that. On the right, you can see that RAB is going to grow considerably, and this shows that debt is going to be used to fund or to finance the RAB, and this is something which is very important, but we can answer questions about this later on. CapEx, as you can see, 0.6 in the first year, it was actually 560, 570. We rounded it up to 600 million euros, but as you can see, the curve that we're going to go through, the meaning is that we are going to put in place a production machine, and investments is like a production line. Each investment is a production line, and what you get at the end are the products, pieces, cables, pipes, whatever. This is how we think. We tend to meet every 15 days to see how investments are going to work, and this is our machine which is going to guarantee the achievement of this result. This is very important because being late in investing money means that we will reap the results with the delays as well. As to the ratio net debt EBITDA, we aim at achieving a reasonable ratio in line with the values of the market, and as you can see, this ratio is going to go down versus what it is in this moment, and this means that we do not have, or we do not see financial problems in implementing the business plan. Let me move on to page number 7, and let's see here a kind of a bridge figure which shows us how the plan is going to be implemented and what the main contributors to the business plan are after 3 years and in the full 5-year period. But as you can see clearly, we haven't done a so-called iceberg plan. There is a plan which at the end during the last year, grows strongly, and in the previous 4 years, moves very, very slowly. On the contrary, you can see that the rhythm, the pace is quite strong, and in the last 2 years of the plan, we might have some enhancements or improvements. We shall see it later on when we'll speak about strategic opportunities. These are actions or opportunities that are not factored into this plan, but we aim at pursuing them. Those opportunities will potentially be an accelerating factor for this business plan. Here you can see the difference between the first 3 years and the last 2 years. You can see the overall growth, which is above our market average, and as you can see, the composition, the contributing factors. Tariff increases provides a good contribution, also tariff premia, which do not include those that we might have in the water business or that we might get from a technical point of view. We need to understand what the authorities, what the regulator have in mind and understand whether there will be additional quality rewards. And then apart from this, you have organic growth and new plants, mainly in the environmental business, and then cost efficiencies. I mentioned this before. Here, the efficiency in managing FTEs, but also more efficient in make-or-buy contracts, and then the last factor here of the first 3 years and of incentives. CIP 6, minus 31 million euros in the first 3 years. Then the last 2 years follow more or less the same factors. Let me move on page 8, where you can see the distribution of investments. I told you that we are going to invest mainly in cables, pipes, and so on and so forth, following the principle of capex remix. Continuing also to leverage on the digitalization effort made by the company in the past. Very useful, very important, but in this moment, Acea needs to invest more on its infrastructures. And so we shall try and put together all of the systems which are necessary, especially those that were implemented in the past, that were digital systems, but as you know, all of the new systems need some fine-tuning that might last for a few months or years in certain cases. We are working on this. We're working on the underlying systems as well. This being said, the company is going to invest a lot on plants, so to speak, focusing especially on network infrastructures. 85% of our investments are going to take place in regulated businesses. As you can see, water 1.6 billion euros, energy 1.1 billion euros, commercial just a slice of the investment, environment 0.2 million euros, and then other, again, small investments. Now, this being said, let me move on to page number 9. This is a page about quality. It helps us go through concepts which I mentioned before. That is that the business plan is going to be characterized also by technology investments, and here you have a number of items: smart and resilient grid, smart meters, both for our electricity and water services. As far as the water business is concerned, we also need to deploy smart meters, and then as far as our company is concerned, this can also help us improve our results. Those who work in these industries or that know these industries know that water meters tend to age, and once they are old, they do not read consumption well. But this goes in favor of our customers. Customers are happy, but we are not that much. So it is important to update our meters in the water business, and it is also important to equip us with digital meters for the water business, because we can use this also for reporting purposes, which is very important. And then automation and robotics, this applies mainly to our electricity grids, but also for water treatment plants or waste treatment plants. And then advanced sensor technology. We cannot remain outside of this world, because it is a very good opportunity to manage plants. In these very same days, we are testing a very innovative system. I'm not going to tell you anything about this now. I can't tell you anything, because if it's going to work, we shall submit a request for a patent. So it's going to become an important lever or driver for change in the change of water networks, because it will help us identify leakage remotely with a very high precision. And then predictive modeling, we are working with a scientific team to work out predictive systems of weather conditions in the medium to long term. It's something which is fundamental for us. Knowing how long it is going to rain in the next 3 to 5 years is going to be fundamental when it comes to our network management, whether we have to create new wells or whether we have to extend a large filtering plants or treatment plants. All of these factors need to be taken into account. We can't do otherwise. There are advanced technologies which are used for other purposes. We're thinking about satellite-based technologies, predictive technologies, which are very, very innovative, which going forward will help us identify correctly our priorities, which is at the basis of the clear definition of our CapEx discipline. So identification, setting priorities, control of plans, appropriate planning, and acquisition of know-how, which is very important to keep under control, or to keep this process under control. And then physical security and cyber security. The more we use technology to control our networks, the more we have to protect ourselves from hacker attacks, which have become very frequent. Let me move on to page 10. Here you find another important piece of information, the new sustainability plan, which runs parallel to the business plan. Our team has worked extensively, our directors have worked extensively as well, and as you can see from this page, the goals or the targets are in line with our business plan. And so ever since the beginning, we created a direct interface between sustainability issues and the productivity factors of our activity. I'm not going to go through the figures here, but as you can see, the figures account for major challenges aiming at achieving two main goals. There is allowing us to grow our economic and financial results, and the second goal, respecting the environment, which can also help us to establish better relations with the people we serve. As you remember, one of the pillars in our business plan is the relations with local communities, local focus and sustainability. This is something that we have put in place, and we are establishing a dialogue with municipalities. Not easy, but our approach is liked and is a new approach to establish relations with the people that we have to serve. Page 11 of the presentation, this is a proposal of the board of directors about the payout policy or dividends. As you can see, we see dividends growing in the period, which follows what we have always done in the past. So here, 2016, saw an increase in dividends. That was and is very challenging going forward. We decided to, capture this challenge, and as you can see, the dividend is not going to go down. On the contrary, is going to increase. We expect in the 5-year period to distribute 700 million euros, and the payout ratio always above 50%. Page 12, you see a number of financial items or the financial strategy. Let me dwell a second on one of these items. First of all, the debt maturity and a number of maturities that we will have shortly, and we will think how to replace such maturities. And you can see then the net debt EBITDA ratio, which once again clearly shows that this ratio is under control during the business plan period. Now let me move on to page 13. Here we will dwell now on individual businesses. Many of the things have already been told, and I will go through them very rapidly. Page 14 of the presentation relates to the main actions, main initiatives included in the plan for our water business. Here we speak of upgrade the network, reduce leaks, rationalization of small treatment plants. Now, please remember that within ATO 2 in Lazio, 170 treatment plants we have during the 5-year period. In the next 15 years, we're going to rationalize the number of treatment plants, trying to avoid using small and very, very small plants, exploiting larger treatment plants that will be equipped with modern technologies, making them more efficient in water treatment, and with an increase of the efficiency of the system. And this is a 15 years plan, and of course in the next 5 years we shall work to achieve some of these goals, and then roll out of smart meters and the use of remote reading. And the next page you can see the investments in the water business very rapidly. You can take a look at this. So here you can see the growth of investments in the water business. It is more concentrated in the first 3 years of the plan, and then the distribution of investments in years. Smart meters, remediation of 800 or more kilometers of water and sewage network, expansion of large treatment plants, and retirement, as we call it, small plants, and then development of Peschiera source. Let me tell you something about the doubling of the capacity of the Peschiera plant. For us, it is strategically important, not only for Acea, not only for Rome, but I would say for our country in general. Rome at the moment receives water through main sources, 3 main aqueducts, 2 of which have shown a number of problems because the water available is not so abundant as we saw in the past few months. We still have a water crisis or a water emergency in Rome, and the Peschiera aqueduct contributes 60% of the water to Rome, and in the upper part, because it is made of two different parts. The upper part goes back to the fascist era, to the 40s. This is something that you can't stop operating, because this will mean no water in Rome, and this is an aqueduct that you need to keep under control, you need to monitor it, and you need to make it more secure, safer. 20 years, for 20 years, we have discussed about these issues with the regulators, with the authorities, and we are now trying to make sure that the issue is well understood. We met a number of ministers, we met with authorities, and now the authorities have kind of understood that this is a project that needs to be implemented. Of course, we need to further discuss things with the regulators, but we understood that within this business plan we could include the planning or the design of this aqueduct, and we were told that investments can be kind of absorbed by tariffs. This would not mean a recalculation of tariffs. The cost of the work, until everything is well defined by the regulators, we do not know whether we will have tariffs financing this work or transfer funds. We do not know yet. We will finalize all of the details when we know something more about this. I don't know whether the President wants to say something about the dialogue with the regulators.
Yes, first of all, I would like you to know that we decided to be very cautious on this business. Even though after the draft we suffered last summer, everybody understood that water scarcity was a big problem, and it ended up being an opportunity. Everybody's now aware that special infrastructural projects are badly needed. Because of that, we started a very constructive dialogue with institutions, not just locally, but nationwide. We had a number of meetings with the top managers of the state, and everybody is keenly aware of this issue today. We are currently in the process of evaluating any possible legal changes, if necessary, to help us improve our work. And anyway, we started working on the procedures that may reasonably lead us to creating this aqueduct in the shortest possible delays. We've been discussing about this for maybe 20 years now, but procedures were so complicated that we never actually get down to not even designing the new project, let alone building it. So I totally agree with the decision that our CEO made on this. He decided to insert the design phase in this business plan, because actually we were told by competent authorities that they will be supportive of this project. Then, of course, we reserve the right to consider building the aqueduct at maybe some later stage, because, as I said, we want to be very cautious in this plan and project, and we want to be very concrete in our proposals. So we want to avoid including question marks in the business plan. We have no reasonable certainty on some things, so we are scheduling to insert that in the plan in future years. But as soon as we get firm updates, we will reasonably think of starting the design of this very important infrastructural work. We did the same in other issues, and the CEO will update you on what exactly follows the same procedures. Thank you, Mr. President. I suggest we shift to page 17, which is about energy infrastructures. Of course, we speak of advanced DSO. So we are going to redo the low voltage network. Resilience is very important. Here again, we will electrify the network and enable new services, in particular through optic fibers and new meters. So these are the main issues, and in page 18 we'll see that translated in numbers. In the first 3 years of the plan, we expect the CAGR to grow by 4.8% and to be 3.5% for the whole plan period. So this is a bit lower than the water part. However, investment is scheduled to be 1.1 billion, and in this case, again, it's going to be pretty regular for every single year in the plan. And the main issues are summarized here. So smart meters, optic fiber, and the bigger investment would be the upgrading of the low voltage, medium voltage network for over 2,500 kilometers. Then commercial and trading is the next chapter. Now, as far as commercial, we'll see, and we are at page 20, that we want to push and grow and become the key players in the consolidation process. We also believe that the shift from the regulated market to the free power market will be an opportunity for us, not so much of a challenge. In case there were any challenges in this, we would be more than able to offset it with bigger opportunities. So we'll get access to a market which is likely to be 20 times as big as before. And since we have a new attitude, which is, if I may say so, more aggressive on the commercial front, we will try and attack new parts of the market too. So I said we want to improve the customer journey, and of course we want to improve costs too. So there's no special news about this. So we can shift to page 21. Which is a presentation of the main numbers for commercial and trading. So in absolute terms, we're thinking about a very important value, which is definitely lower than the other businesses, but in relative terms, we expect a very important growth here. This is a pretty challenging part of our operations, and I've actually been working on this in detail with my colleagues during these last few months of preparation. We performed several analyses and what-if scenarios and comparisons and so on. We carefully analyzed the behavior of our peers and the other players on the market. And we are now confident that even though this is going to be a complex challenge, it's certainly up to our reach. So let's now shift to page 23, the environment. As you see, we go back to the idea of increasing the amount of waste processed, which is the most important piece of news. And we want to reduce, reuse, recycle materials we handle, of course. And then page 24 reports the main numbers here, EBITDA. Well, of course, the growth will actually suffer the impact of the expiry of CIP6 in the first 3 years of the plan, but we once again will put our resilience to play. So in the 3 to 5 years of the business plan, we believe this business is going to be more resilient and more robust, because after we have gotten rid of the CIP6 expiry problem, we will keep a high liquidity level by investing on new plants, which are going to be more and more satisfactory in the future. Actually, if you look at CAGR for the second part of the plan, the last 2 years, it's double digits. Having said so, I'd now like to talk for a few minutes about this other issue, which is our strategic opportunities. So we call this strategic opportunities a strategy basket in Italian, because we want it to be visualized as a real physical basket that we can draft from to develop new opportunities. So some of the opportunities have been already filled in and put in this basket of opportunities. And of course, we're going to provide you with a kind of a bird's eye view today, because some of these activities are now still being studied. For some others, we signed MOUs with other companies. In some other cases, we are at the pre-execution phase, but that means there's still some uncertainties. So we are not finalized anything here, but we should see this strategy basket in a twofold way. First of all, they are a kind of a backup plan in case some of the planned activities were delayed or not authorized immediately or whatever. We do have these opportunities as an alternative in store, and some other alternatives may actually simply mean an upside on the pretty ambitious objectives we've presented already. And you'll find the details at page 26. So the first is consolidation in areas where we are already present, for water in particular. Now, you see there are some ranges of EBITDA and CapEx here. And there is a simple reason why we put ranges here. So there are several projects, some of which are more mature, whereas others are still ongoing. Some are more likely to happen, others are more challenging. So we believe, and we want to put pretty much everything we're working on with. I'm sorry, I hear someone speaking. But anyway, we're pretty confident on several of these ongoing projects, and so that's why we have this range. We have a minimum value of 70 million EBITDA, a maximum value of 200 million, compared to the investment. In some cases, this may be not just CapEx, but acquisition costs too, but in most cases, these are investments that need to be made to finalize some projects. For instance, consolidation projects normally concern several areas that may be getting together and joined together, considering the extension of concessions. So extension of concessions needs to be authorized with a specific investment plan in mind that needs to be supported. So in this particular case, if we commit to consolidate, we'll also need to commit to support the investments that go with the extension of concessions. Then we have the increase of the capacity of the Peschiera source. The maximum value here would be the cost of the higher aqueduct of the Peschiera as we are designing it. No EBITDA has been calculated yet here because, as I told you, as long as we don't understand exactly how this is going to be financed, we're not prepared to give you an EBITDA figure. EBITDA would be readily calculated should the authorities say you put in 50%, we put in another 50%. So that 50% will be calculated in the tariffs, and the EBITDA will be calculated as a consequence. Another possibility is the entry of Acea in the gas distribution. Well, first of all, entry is not exactly the right wording because we do already have a very small gas operation, but we're speaking of something totally different today. So our intention would be that of trying to seize an opportunity from tenders, for public tenders that are quite slow, as you may understand. There are several opportunities emerging in locations where we are already present through water management in particular or other operations, and we would think it would be very efficient to create synergies between these two businesses. So we are actually studying these things carefully. We have studied them carefully already. There are some opportunities emerging, and we also started talking to some people about this. And we already started creating some connections with other medium, large industry players to try and understand whether any partnerships may emerge or any stake may be purchased for us to be involved in tendering too. Then smart energy service. This is connected to our willingness to start operating in the market of services supporting the mere sale of commodities. So this is the whole smart city project. I was describing it before. However, these numbers, which is about 25 million in investments, doesn't mean we need to invest to lay down optic fibers. I'm sure you understand that together with Open Fiber, we are trying to finalize an agreement so that they will eventually lay the fibers in the city of Rome. We're really confident we're going to succeed with this agreement. We're working very well with our partner, and so hopefully as early as 2018 we will start planning operations there. So that agreement is about laying fibers, and Open Fiber has not only the competences but also it has already set aside the necessary investment. Acea will contribute its know-how, its expertise and operating capabilities, and the agreement will be a win-win situation. It will be an accelerator for Open Fiber and their challenging plans, whereas for us, it will also serve as an accelerator of this kind of infrastructure. We will contribute to implement it because we'll need it and use it too. We have a very relevant captive market, which includes thousands and thousands of devices that need to talk to each other because of advanced automation and smart grid management. And so to really implement a smart grid, we will rely on the smart city network as well. So we'll put those concepts together. But that means other opportunities too. Once you have access to an optic fiber infrastructure, you will be able to supply good services to the citizens. And of course, we will talk to our customers. We will try and attach a value to these services. We know already what services we will be likely to provide, how much they're worth, and what market will we serve. So although we're very careful, again, these numbers you see here are the outcome of a pretty complex business plan we have been thinking about already. It is still in the strategic opportunities chapter because we haven't fully defined all details yet. What is sure is that in case there is some kind of vehicle that will be dedicated to the smart energy service market, it will be totally controlled by Acea itself, because the city of Rome is not only our main market, but we also enjoy a kind of a natural monopoly for some infrastructures and some services in Rome. Now, having said that, another opportunity is the consolidation of our position in waste treatment and composting in particular. And here again, we are thinking of possible acquisitions or new projects, but they are not mature yet, and that's why, for good caution, they are listed with the strategic opportunities to be confirmed. So page 27 shows a very simple scheme that gives you a visual rendering of the business plan potential upside in case even just some of these initiatives were to be implemented. So I think this serves to show how robust the plan is, because it's not just based on fundamentals, it also has a very good backup. I'm calling this reserve or backup because I'm a very cautious person, but these are not necessarily backups or reserves. These are things we should do on top of the plan that we are confident we will be able to attain and achieve. Now that's all for my presentation. I see we still have some time available. I think we have about half an hour before we have to move on to the press conference. So if you have questions at this stage, I'll be happy to try and answer you. Would you please be so kind as to say your name before you ask questions? Thank you.
Good morning. Enrico Bartoli, my first. I have a few questions to ask. Well, first of all, a very general question. You gave us a number of details about the changes that you are going to implement, including cultural changes that you're going to implement inside of the company, new technologies, replacement of people who leave the company with younger people. Now, can you tell us something about how confident you feel about being able to implement these changes inside of the company? Now, second question about the EBITDA evolution in water business and in the infrastructure business. Now, as far as water is concerned, the CapEx is going to go up strongly at the end of the business plan period, whereas tariff increases tend to be concentrated let's say, between now and 2020. The same applies to infrastructures. CapEx is flatter, but tariff increases are more concentrated in the first part of the business plan. And then another question about the energy business. Can you tell us something about your assumptions related to the impact of the liberalization of the residential market? What is the impact that you expect to have, let's say, starting in 2019, and what kind of volumes do you expect to be able to achieve, and meaning market share growth, because of this? Thank you. Okay, let me take your first question, and then I will give the floor to the CFO, who will get into the details of CapEx and tariffs. Now you are trying to understand to what extent our employees are going to accept the change that we are going to implement. Well, I have no doubt about this. Acea, in its history, has been able to change more than once, and I trust the capability of employees and colleagues to understand the challenge behind our goals. And I am sure, I'm confident they will be a part of it, which doesn't mean that it is going to be easy. No? It's not something that you can do overnight. For this reason, we have developed an integrated project, which also implies establishing a more constructive relationship with trade unions. We have set a platform of negotiation or debate with trade unions about a number of issues that we want to discuss together. The overall aim is that of achieving the best and the most for our employees. So I think that this allows us to start a dialogue with our people and with trade unions in the best possible way. I know Acea quite well, although for more than 10 years I had to go somewhere else. But I know Acea quite well, and I know that this is not going to be a problem inside of our company. It's going to be seen as an opportunity for everyone. As far as tariffs and CapEx are concerned, let me hand you over to the CFO, who will take your questions about them. Now, what we took into account are investments slowing gradually from 2018 forward in the water business, and we are keeping to the regulatory framework as far as tariff increases. In ATO 2, we have tariff growth which is inside of the cap, so we have no problem going beyond the cap, so it follows as well our CapEx trends. Now, as far as electricity is concerned, I do not see it as a problem. Now, we know that tariff increases initially are going to be quite flat, and it also relates to the fact that we have already made investments. Now, when it comes to electricity, we made a number of investments, let's say, in the digital world and so on. So tariffs going forward do not have a major impact. You just see the whole picture, but I do not see any difficulty or any abnormality. Now, you asked what we think about the impact of the liberalization, the deregulation of the market. It's very difficult to, make assumptions or forecasts about margins coming from this. Now, the idea of this business plan is that margins are not going to grow considerably because of this. And as I told you before, we are going to put in place a strong cost discipline. As far as volumes are concerned, either we're not going to have problems or we will have a huge number of problems. Now, we're not a major player onto the overall national market, and since we want to operate in other areas in a new manner, volumes are going to help us considerably, so we don't see problems here. The figures have been calculated by also relying on cautiousness. Buongiorno, Javier Suarez, Mediobanca. I have three questions to ask. The first question about the dividend policy. The CEO made a comment that was somewhat general, but I'd like to have some granularity. Why don't you have a clearer dividend policy? Let me ask the question in a different manner. What is the mandate that the management team has received by the majority shareholder when it comes to the dividend? Second question about debt. Page 6, now 2.5 billion euros for 2017, but there is also a deterioration of the working capital in the year. My question is the following. I guess you are going to improve the working capital through or in the business plan period. Is that so? And then another question about capex. The company is growing capex considerably, and so the company has turned from being a dividend-centric company to a capex-centric company. But what is the execution risk? What is the visibility you have on capex, and how much you're confident you can implement these investments? This goes back to the question that was asked before. Could you please tell us something about the tariff increase, for instance, in the water business, that then support this type of investments? Let me answer question number 2, because then I want to leave the floor to the president to answer the dividend-related question. Now, working capital, the first question. The second question. Well, it was not an easy year. We inherited a complex conditions, and money collection was not very good, and that was caused by systems not working properly in the past. Problems in issuing invoicing, problems in detaching customers from the network automatically. We did a lot over the past few months, and please remember that between September and October we reached our historical result in terms of credit collection in the ATO 2 area. I mean, this in a couple of months when we devoted to a number of activities. First of all, working on systems to fine-tune the workaround, and then second type of work we have done, we tried to work with the management team to involve more our line managers. And when it comes to the working capital next year and going forward, well, this has been worked out quite clearly. The figures that you see now will be forgotten. The working capital is improving. At the end of the year, results are going to be better. I can't tell you now. We'll disclose the results for the full year, but it's going to be better than it is now. And what is going to happen going forward is to achieve asymptotically a value which is more appropriate for our company, and will not be a positive working capital, but will be a negative working capital, but much, much less than what it is now. And we will then disclose the figures when we present the full year and when we shall present the results of the quarters going forward. Now, the execution risk when it comes to our capex plan, well, is the risk for companies like ours. These are companies that can work well if investments can be made at the right time and for the right size. But you need to take the different sectors individually. There might be an execution risk, let's say, for an investment plan for the refurbishment of the water network. I do not see that kind of difficulty in the moment in the water business. There are some investments which are not seizable when it comes to money to be invested, but which are strategic for us. Let's say the authorizations to be received by the authorities, which related to a new well or for the construction of a new treatment plan. Well, if authorizations arrive or are given on time, this will be certainly positive, but we are confident that we will be able to achieve our capex plan. I mean, I am not including here the Peschiera plant, which is something separate and which I explained to you how it's going to be approached. As far as electricity is concerned, I see no problem. When it comes to the electricity business, we have no major issues. Well, we of course have to hope that citizens will not be annoyed by our works in the street, because we need to break up, so to speak, and make excavations. And of course, you know, the water business, since we have to receive authorizations, there might be some delays, but I think that such authorizations will be granted, because in many Italian regions or Italian areas there are criticalities, and these issues are to be resolved. In Tuscany, for instance, we have seen a very constructive approach on the part of the authorities, and so we operate in different areas. We tend to put forward, propose solutions. If these solutions can be applied and implemented, we can invest money. We offer the solution to the areas in which we operate. The company will certainly get some benefits, but also the areas will certainly have some advantages. I mean, you may say you have a capex and you risk not being able to fund this capex. Well, let me tell you that the capex plan in the water business have been devised in line with the development of the water world, so to speak, and then as you can see, the increase in tariffs is going to go down in years, but it supports our plan. So when it comes to tariffs, we do not have issues or problems until the TOTEX is fully implemented. But based on a dialogue that we established with the authorities, the TOTEX system will only be implemented at the end of our plan. However, we are convinced that we have to apply that approach. Not much will change. Dividends, I give the floor to President. Now, I know that there are comparable companies that have indicated the amount of dividends to be distributed. We decided to use a different approach. Page 11, I'm sorry. We made a number of assumptions based on the gross numbers and based on what we can achieve during the business plan period. We indicated an assumed distribution of dividends, which is related to our plan. I think it would be very difficult for me to manage a company based on a mandate given by the shareholders on dividends or on results. Now, so we have no mandate about dividends distribution. Now we have certainly a public shareholder. They tend to rely on dividends to comply with the public finance rules. But in this case, they decided to leave the management free to set a reasonable dividend policy, which is not, imposed from above, but which has been the result of discussions.
Hello, I'm Stefano Gambrini of Equita. I also have 3 questions. So the first, once again, is on the new hires, the new assumptions you've made for tariffs for 2020. 2020 is going to see a change of regulation in both industries. So what WACC do you use in both water and electric? And I see there are some quality issues in water. So is there going to be any kind of negative effect after 2020, or do you think this is confirmed? And the same is true for OPEX. What are your assumptions from this viewpoint in the water side? And as far as energy infrastructures are concerned, I was wondering whether you could give us a breakdown of EBITDA between power generation, street lighting, and distribution that you expect for 2020. Then, as to waste, could you please elaborate on the new initiatives that will count for 12 million in the period between today and 2020? What new plants are you going to start operating? Do you consider a further upside there? I know it is included in the following slide, but what kind of upside are you thinking about, especially in the waste segment in the short run? Now, as to the assumptions for the water business, our assumptions are not fundamentally different from what we have in the current regulation, even for the years up to 2020. So I think that WACC calculated was 5.23%. To complete your first question and the impact of tariffs in the first few years, well, that's certainly very relevant, but there's a component of new investment fund that has an impact on EBITDA in the few years, which will slowly and gradually disappear in the following years. Then you were asking about the breakdown, the EBITDA breakdown. Then you were asking about the environment, right? Now, as for the environmental business, the waste business, some projects have been presented already. They are currently under authorization. Whereas some other projects are currently being defined for the implementation area of projects in case of shared projects in particular. So we are in the process of identifying areas where some installations can be built that have already been designed and prepared, and they're currently being assessed. For some areas outside the city of Rome, in other locations, including, for instance, Tuscany, we recently acquired a site where an installation is scheduled to be built in the next 3 years for sludge treatment with pretty advanced technology. And this is supposed to actually sort out this sludge management problem we have, and we should be able to process there all the sludge we produce in the Tuscany region. We are actually currently assessing this installation, so I'd rather refrain from giving you specific details as we speak. But what you find in the plan has either been approved or been filed already, or at the pre-execution stage. Should I go back to your question on distribution? So the growth of EBITDA in the first 3 years in commercial and training is mainly due to distribution, including the open fiber project. And as to organic growth, we will actually have to offset the end of the LED rollout plan. So we will have to search for extra revenues in the public lighting sector. Hello, I'm Roberto Ranieri from Banca IMI. I have a couple of questions on the upside. I think the business plan is a very robust plan, and it's oriented to providing capex for growth. Now, back to the upside and to the dividend policy. I wonder whether the debt over EBITDA ratio you have announced for the end of the plan period is a minimum level you want to achieve, or whether you think there is some upside potential there, and whether the increase of the debt over EBITDA ratio may end up in giving some upside for extra dividends or extra growth investment. Then the second question in particular, as far as the industrial upside is concerned, is about gas distribution. You said you are assessing possible M&As or acquisitions with medium-sized or small players, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe larger players too. I think you mentioned possible acquisitions in gas networks. So could you please elaborate on that? Could you please tell us, first of all, where you're going to work in terms of M&As for gas distribution? Secondly, for 2018, what do you expect from the gas tenders? And for the early months of 2018, what's your business view about the possible tenders that are likely to be made available on the market? And then from the consolidated EBITDA value as I see it there and the capex you're committing, if I'm not mistaken, the multiples you're thinking of seem to be pretty conservative. So what kind of extra RAB can you expect from there? What can be added to your RAB from these possible M&A deals? So you mentioned joint ventures. Are you thinking of partnerships? Is RAB going to be consolidated, and is EBITDA going to be consolidated? I think this is the case because it's in the upside of 200, 300 million euros you've been presenting. Now, as to the net financial position on EBITDA and possible upsides in the plan, well, I will try and split my answer in 2 parts. So if you look at the plan in organic terms, meaning organic growth terms, possible upside certainly comes from the company's possibility to perform better in terms of EBITDA, which is certainly not something we are ruling out. And if we look at the next financial position forecast, I think this plan is pretty challenging to begin with. As Stefano said before, as far as working capital is concerned, some of the working capital is absorbed structurally because of regulations. So this plan, especially in its early years, is pretty challenging to begin with. Let me give you just two ballpark figures. In the third quarter of this year, the company was absorbing about 350 million of working capital, also because of outside factors such as the split payment regulations or the gala issue. For the first years, the absorption target we're aiming at is lower than 100 million, despite absorption because of regulatory factors. So I think that it's quite unlikely to obtain further upside because of better cash generation capacity, whereas an improvement of EBITDA is more likely. Then if I look at upside from possible strategic opportunities, the most visible opportunity would be the consolidation of water companies where we hold a minority stake today. And as you see from the macro numbers we presented, that would be in view of the net financial position over EBITDA ratio, that would be the most visible change. So in case we were able to consolidate some companies we're not consolidating today, that would have an impact which is certainly higher than any possible increase of EBITDA. So that would automatically improve the net financial position over EBITDA ratio. And well, if that happens, it's something we'll have to evaluate if and when it happens. But if consolidation is available, the ratio would automatically improve substantially. As to gas tenders, before we hear again from our CEO to answer the contents of your question, I would like to chip in and do a couple of comments here. So if you work in this industry professionally, you know that the gas tenders is an age-old problem. Tenders were supposed to be launched some years ago, and actually they're lagging behind, both because the market has changed significantly and because writing tenders is such a complicated regulatory effort that it normally takes much longer than originally expected. So it would take a crystal ball to tell you what tenders and how many tenders will be actually launched in 2018. Many tenders were issued in the last few years, but actually the only one that has reasonable expectations to go through is the one for Milan, because even Verona 2 and Vercelli and others were stopped waiting for regulatory abolition. So here we were talking about a possible partnership, and I yield the floor to our CEO to talk about that in more practical terms. Of course, I'm not going to give you a specific illustration on this possible deal. It's a very delicate issue. We cannot give you any specific information about it yet, also because we're still talking to quite a few people, so I'd rather not give an answer now. I would say that where we are present in Umbria, Tuscany, and Lazio in particular, we would like to be involved in tenders with medium-small, medium-large players as partners, just in case we wanted to acquire companies, and that would be small or medium-small companies, or create partnerships that would be giving good results for both. But good results in case of partnership are not necessarily an increase of EBITDA, but I'd rather postpone the answer to your question to some later date. Hello, Mary Stanini of Banca IMI. I have a couple of questions still outstanding. So the first would be a technical question. Could you please give us a breakdown of the RAB at 2022 between electric distribution and water? And the second question is just a curiosity. You mentioned the return on net invested capital at 13% over the plan period. Could you please give us some information of the net invested capital at the end of the plan? And most importantly, what are the business areas where you want to really go on at full speed on increasing ROI? And in particular, I'm thinking of electricity distribution, first and foremost. Okay, considering that today RAB is 3.2 billion, 1.9 is electric, and 1.2 billion is water. So by 2020, we expect the 1.9 billion of electric to become 2.1 billion, whereas water is going to be about 1.7 billion. And in 2022, the 3.2 billion will be subdivided in 2.2 billion electric, and about 1.9 billion on water. Net invested capital at the end of the plan period? Well, was his looking for the numbers? Can I answer your question, your final question about where, in what industry do we expect, or could we expect a higher return on investment? So you mentioned electricity, which is certainly the industry that lends itself better to this because of its features. Because, of course, a great drive towards automation technology creates the right opportunities to reduce operating costs. And so that could allow us to, let's say, beat the regulator, which is always our first objective. Also, if we add other issues too that are relating the investments in smart grids, the investments on smart city services and so on, they will bring in benefits that will have an overall beneficial impact on ROI. But as far as water is concerned too, higher efficiency through the adoption of innovative technology, such as leakage search and so on, can certainly optimize our performance. So considering solutions to be adopted in remote control of water cleaning systems may be another way to, once again, beat the regulators. Well, back to the net invested capital, the forecast for the end of 2017 is 4.3 billion. Our plan says that 4.9 billion will be achieved, 5.2 in 2020 and 5.8 in 2022. We are supposed to start the press conference right now. We only have time for one final question. I'm still Javier from Mediobanca. Can I go back to a question asked previously? In net debt over EBITDA, I see the multiple is 3 times. For a company that's over 80% regulated in European context, it appears to be relatively low. Should I go back to slide 26 and all the opportunities you have in stores? My question is, what kind of debt on EBITDA level is the company likely to achieve if all these opportunities materialize? What level would you be comfortable with? And my second question is a follow-up of my previous question. Considering consolidation and M&As, will the company be available to issue its own paper, or whatever consolidation you're thinking of will happen through cash payments? Well, I'll take both your questions quickly. So, as to the second question, the answer is maybe, but still to be assessed, depending on what opportunities emerge. As to the first question, we believe that even when comparing ourselves to the market peers, this is the most suitable value. It should be under 3, which is what we did for the business plan period. We don't feel the need to stress this parameter even further. Actually, we believe it will improve with the new opportunities we have presented today. Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to have a press conference today, and we'll be happy to have you, our guests, for a light meal.